They say you can hear everything when you're in a coma. They say your mind floats in a dark ocean, catching fragments of voices, touches, whispers, but nothing prepared me for the moment I heard my own son planning my murder. My name is Patricia Green. I'm 61 years old, and I live in Madison, Wisconsin. 2 months ago, I collapsed in my kitchen while preparing Thomas's favorite apple pie, the same recipe I'd been making for him since he was 5 years old. A massive stroke, the doctor said. My chances of waking up were less than 15%, but I'm a fighter. I've always been a fighter. I spent my entire life building a comfortable existence for my family. After my husband, Richard, died of cancer 12 years ago, I threw myself into my accounting firm, working 70-hour weeks to ensure Thomas would never want for anything. I paid for his college education, $127,000 in total, without asking for a single penny back. When he married Rebecca 6 years ago, I gave them $85,000 as a down payment for their house, a beautiful colonial in the suburbs. I wanted them to start their marriage without the burden of debt. Thomas was my everything, my only child, my reason for living after Richard passed. I spoiled him, perhaps too much. Rebecca seemed sweet at first, blonde, petite, with a smile that could light up a room. But over the years, I noticed changes. The way she'd roll her eyes when I spoke, the heavy sighs when I called, the canceled dinners and forgotten birthdays. Still, I never imagined this. The hospital room was cold that November evening. Through my barely open eyelids, I could see the machines surrounding my bed, their lights blinking like indifferent stars. My body felt like lead, unresponsive, trapped in a prison of flesh. But my mind was crystal clear for the first time in weeks. I heard footsteps, 2 pairs. The swish of expensive clothing. She looks the same. Rebecca's voice cut through the sterile air like a knife. This is taking too long, Thomas. Keep your voice down. That was my son, my Thomas. But his tone was ice cold, devoid of the warmth I'd known for 35 years. We've been waiting for 2 months, Rebecca hissed. The lawyer said if she doesn't have a will, everything goes to you as the next of kin. The house alone is worth $650,000, not to mention her investment accounts. We're talking about over $2 million, Thomas. My heart, or what I could feel of it, shattered into 1,000 pieces. I know the numbers, Rebecca. Thomas's voice dropped to barely a whisper. I strained to hear, every fiber of my being focused on his next words. Tonight, we'll turn off the machines. No one will suspect. The doctor said she could go at any time. We'll just help nature along. My hands trembled beneath the thin hospital blanket. Tears I couldn't shed burned behind my closed eyelids. This couldn't be real. This had to be a nightmare, another fevered dream in my coma-induced hell. But it wasn't. Finally, Rebecca said with audible relief. I'm so tired of this vigil act. Playing the concerned daughter-in-law is exhausting. They left. The door clicked shut, with a sound like a coffin closing. I lay there in the darkness, my mind screaming, my body useless. Then I heard another sound. Soft footsteps, the rustle of scrubs. A face appeared above me. Nurse Charlotte. I'd heard her name mentioned countless times during my unconscious state. Her brown eyes were wide, intelligent, kind. She looked directly into my eyes, and I realized she could see. She knew I was aware. Stay calm, she whispered, her hand gently touching mine. I heard everything. You're not alone, Patricia. I heard everything, and I'm going to help you. If you're watching this, please hit that like button and subscribe to my channel. I need your support to share what happened next, and leave me a comment telling me where you're watching from and what time it is there. Knowing I'm not alone in this makes all the difference. Charlotte Martinez had been a nurse for 17 years, but she'd never encountered a situation quite like mine. As she checked my vitals that night, her hands moved with practiced efficiency while her mind raced with the implications of what she'd overheard. Can you hear me, Patricia? She whispered, leaning close. Blink once for yes, twice for no. I summoned every ounce of strength in my battered body and forced my right eyelid to flutter. Once. A single, deliberate blink. Charlotte's face flooded with relief and determination. Thank God. Listen carefully. I'm going to step out and call hospital security. Your son and daughter-in-law were scheduled to have access to your room tonight for private family time. The night supervisor approved it 3 days ago. We need to change that immediately. She squeezed my hand. Blink if you understand. I blinked. Once. You're going to be okay. I promise you that. Charlotte straightened, her jaw set with fierce resolve. My mother was in a similar situation 5 years ago. My brother tried to convince the doctors to remove her feeding tube. I know exactly what you're going through. As Charlotte moved toward the door, it suddenly swung open. Thomas stood in the doorway, his face registering surprise at finding the nurse still in the room. "Oh," he said, his voice dripping with false concern. "I didn't realize you were still here. I just wanted to spend a few minutes with my mother before heading home." Charlotte didn't miss a beat. "Of course, Mr. Green. I was just finishing up Mrs. Green's evening assessment. Actually, I need to speak with you about her care plan. Would you mind stepping into the hallway for a moment?" Thomas's eyes narrowed slightly, but he maintained his grieving son facade. "Can't it wait until morning? I've had such a long day." "I'm afraid it can't," Charlotte said firmly. "It's regarding her medication schedule and some concerns Dr. Palmer has about her treatment protocol. It'll only take a moment." Thomas glanced at me lying in the bed, and for a split second, I saw something dark flicker across his face. Annoyance, impatience. Not grief, not love, just cold calculation. "Fine," he said curtly. As they stepped into the hallway, I could hear their muffled conversation. Charlotte was explaining something about my care, her voice professional and steady. Thomas's responses were clipped, irritated. Minutes felt like hours. My mind raced with questions. How long had Thomas been planning this? Was it his idea or Rebecca's? Had they already tried something during my coma? How many times had they stood over my bed, waiting for me to die naturally so they wouldn't have to take action? The door opened again. Charlotte returned alone, quickly closing the door behind her. "He's gone," she said, her voice low and urgent. "I told him that Dr. Palmer ordered hourly vitals checks throughout the night due to fluctuations in your blood pressure. He wasn't happy, but he left. I also called security. There's an officer stationed at the end of the hallway now." She pulled a chair close to my bed and sat down, her dark eyes filled with compassion and anger. "Patricia, we need to get you stronger, fast. Can you feel anything? Try to move your fingers for me." I concentrated with everything I had. My right index finger twitched, barely a movement, but it was there. Charlotte's face broke into a smile. "Excellent. You're regaining motor function. That's incredibly promising. The doctor said you might have some paralysis if you woke up, but this is good. This is very good." She leaned closer. "Here's what's going to happen. I'm going to document every bit of your progress in a separate file. I'm also going to record a statement about what I heard tonight, time-stamped and signed. I have a friend who's a lawyer. Her name is Jennifer Hastings, and she specializes in elder abuse cases." Elder abuse. The words hit me like a physical blow. That's what this was. My own son was planning to to murder his mother for money. For $1.2 million, Thomas was willing to end the life of the woman who'd given him everything. "Tomorrow morning," Charlotte continued, "I'm going to start working with you on physical therapy. Small movements at first. We need to get you strong enough to communicate what happened. The moment you can speak or write, we're going to the police." I blinked once, tears finally escaping from the corners of my eyes. Charlotte gently wiped them away. "I know this is devastating. I can't imagine the pain you're feeling right now. But you're a survivor, Patricia. You survived a massive stroke. You're going to survive this too." She stood and checked the door, ensuring it was locked from the inside. "I'm staying with you tonight. I've already cleared it with the supervisor. Told her you're in a critical phase and need constant monitoring. Thomas and Rebecca won't get anywhere near those machines." As Charlotte settled into the chair beside my bed, I felt a small spark of hope ignite in my chest. I wasn't alone. This stranger, this compassionate angel in scrubs, was risking her career to save my life. The next 3 days blurred together in a haze of pain, determination, and incremental progress. Charlotte worked with me during every shift, her patience endless, her encouragement unwavering. "Squeeze my hand," she'd whisper during her rounds. "Just a little harder. Good, Patricia. That's good." My strength was returning in frustrating increments. First, the fingers on my right hand began to respond more consistently. Then my toes. By the 3rd day, I could turn my head slightly to the left, though the effort exhausted me completely. Charlotte had been true to her word. A security guard was now permanently stationed outside my room, and she'd implemented a strict visitor policy. No one could enter without her present. Thomas and Rebecca had come twice, their faces masks of concern for any observers, but I could see the frustration simmering beneath their performances. "Mom, why all this security?" Thomas had asked Charlotte during his second visit, his voice tight. "You're treating her like she's in danger. She's in a coma, for God's sake." "Hospital policy for high-risk patients," Charlotte had replied smoothly. "Your mother's condition is very delicate. We can't risk any complications from unauthorized individuals tampering with her equipment." "Unauthorized individuals?" Rebecca had interjected, her voice sharp. "We're her family, and you're welcome to visit during approved hours with medical staff present," Charlotte had responded, her tone professional but firm. "Dr. Palmer's orders." The look Rebecca gave Charlotte could have frozen hell itself. During one of Charlotte's night shifts, she brought in her friend Jennifer Hastings, the lawyer she'd mentioned. Jennifer was a tall woman in her late 40s, with sharp green eyes and an air of quiet competence. "Mrs. Green," Jennifer said softly, pulling up a chair beside my bed, "Charlotte has told me everything. I've been working on elder abuse cases for 20 years, and I want you to know, we're going to protect you. We're going to make sure your son faces justice for what he's planned." She pulled out a small recording device. "I need you to understand something. What Charlotte overheard, that's hearsay in legal terms. It's her word against theirs. What we need is evidence, hard evidence. Are you willing to work with us to get that evidence?" I blinked once. "Yes." Jennifer nodded. "Good. Here's what I'm proposing. We're going to set a trap. Once you're strong enough to communicate, even if it's just writing a few words, we're going to let Thomas and Rebecca think you're still completely incapacitated. We'll give them an opportunity to incriminate themselves while we record everything." The thought terrified me, but I understood the necessity. Without concrete evidence, it would be my word against theirs, and I was an elderly woman who'd suffered a massive stroke. Any testimony I gave could be dismissed as confusion or delusion. "It's risky," Jennifer continued, "but it's the best way to ensure they face real consequences. Charlotte and I will be there the entire time. You'll never be in actual danger." I blinked once more. Yes, I'd do whatever it took. Over the following days, my progress accelerated. Dr. Palmer, a kind man in his 60s who'd been overseeing my care, was astonished by my recovery. "This is remarkable," he said during one examination, shining a light in my eyes. "Patricia, can you squeeze my hand?" I did, with much more force than I'd managed even a day before. "Outstanding. Let's try something else. Can you stick out your tongue?" My tongue felt like a foreign object in my mouth, but I managed to push it past my lips. Dr. Palmer beamed. "Excellent. Your motor functions are returning much faster than we anticipated. At this rate, you might regain speech within a week or two." But Charlotte and Jennifer had advised me to hide the full extent of my recovery. The less Thomas and Rebecca knew about my progress, the better. "When family visits," Charlotte had instructed, "don't respond. Stay completely still. Let them think nothing has changed." It was one of the hardest things I'd ever done, lying there like a corpse while Thomas stood over me, speaking in that false, syrupy tone about how much he missed me and how he prayed every night for my recovery. All lies. Every word was poison wrapped in sugar. During one visit, I heard Rebecca whisper to Thomas near the door, thinking I couldn't hear. "How much longer? My patience is wearing thin. We have that trip to Tuscany planned for next month. I'm not canceling again because your mother won't die." "Soon," Thomas muttered back. "This weekend. The nurse can't be here 24/7. We'll find our window." My blood ran cold. This weekend. They were planning something for this weekend. After they left, I frantically tried to get Charlotte's attention. She was adjusting my IV when I managed to make a small sound, something between a grunt and a moan. She immediately focused on me. "Patricia, what's wrong?" I tried to move my hand, to point, to communicate urgency. Charlotte understood instantly. She grabbed a small whiteboard and marker from the supply cart. "Can you write? Even just one letter?" With trembling effort, I gripped the marker. My handwriting was barely legible, shaky as a child's first attempts, but I managed to scrawl one word: weekend. Charlotte's face went pale. "They're planning something this weekend?" I blinked once. "Yes." "Then we need to accelerate our timeline," Charlotte said, immediately pulling out her phone. "I'm calling Jennifer right now." Jennifer arrived within the hour, her face grim with determination. She, Charlotte, and Dr. Palmer huddled in a corner of my room, speaking in low, urgent tones. "If they're planning to act this weekend, We need to move now, Jennifer said. Patricia's made incredible progress, but she's not strong enough yet to give a full statement. We need them on record, clear, undeniable evidence of their intent. Dr. Palmer shook his head, concern etched across his features. I'm not comfortable putting my patient at risk. What you're suggesting is dangerous. What's dangerous is waiting, Jennifer countered. These two have already demonstrated they're willing to commit murder. If they succeed before we have evidence, Patricia dies and they inherit everything. We can't let that happen. Charlotte spoke up. Doctor, I'll be here the entire time. Security will be stationed right outside. We'll have Jennifer monitoring from the observation room. Patricia won't be in any real danger. Real danger? Dr. Palmer's voice rose slightly. They're planning to unplug her life support, which they won't get the chance to do, Jennifer said firmly. The moment they make any move toward the equipment, security intervenes. But we need them to verbally confirm their intent while being recorded. Wisconsin is a one-party consent state. Charlotte can legally record any conversation she's part of or witnesses. I managed to make another sound, drawing their attention. Charlotte came to my side with the whiteboard. With painful slowness, I wrote, "Do it." Dr. Palmer looked at me for a long moment, then sighed heavily. Against my better judgment, but it's your choice, Patricia, if you're certain. I blinked once. Yes, I was certain. I needed justice. More than that, I needed to ensure Thomas and Rebecca could never do this to anyone else. Jennifer outlined the plan. Tomorrow is Saturday. Charlotte, can you work the evening shift? I'll make it happen, Charlotte confirmed. Good. We'll let Thomas and Rebecca know, through official channels, making it seem routine, that Patricia will be undergoing some tests Sunday morning that require she be alone tonight for proper rest. Make it seem like an opportunity. They'll think the security presence will be lighter on a weekend evening. But it won't be, Charlotte said. Exactly. We'll have off-duty officers positioned throughout this wing. Jennifer will be in the observation room with recording equipment. Dr. Palmer, we'll need you on standby in case there's any medical emergency. Dr. Palmer nodded reluctantly. I'll be here. Patricia, Jennifer addressed me directly. You'll need to remain completely still, completely unresponsive. No matter what they say or do, unless they actually try to touch the equipment, you cannot react. Can you do that? The thought of lying there while my son and his wife stood over me, planning my death, made my stomach turn. But I blinked once. Yes. If at any point you feel you're in genuine danger, try to make a sound. Any sound. That will be our signal to intervene immediately. The next 24 hours crawled by with agonizing slowness. Charlotte worked her regular shift Friday, maintaining our routine. Thomas visited briefly in the afternoon, his impatience barely concealed beneath his mask of filial devotion. How is she today? He asked Charlotte, his eyes fixed on the machines surrounding my bed. Status quo, Charlotte replied. No significant changes. I could see the frustration in the tightening of his jaw. No changes meant no natural death, which meant he'd have to take action. I see, Thomas said quietly. Well, I'll be back tomorrow evening. Rebecca and I want to spend some time with her. Actually, Charlotte said, as if just remembering, tomorrow evening might not be ideal. Patricia is scheduled for some neurological testing Sunday morning. The doctor wants her to have a quiet night beforehand. No visitors after 6 p.m. Thomas's eyes sharpened with interest. No visitors? None at all? That's correct. Just medical staff. She needs complete rest. I understand, Thomas said, and I could hear the wheels turning in his mind. We'll try to visit earlier in the day then. After he left, Charlotte looked at me and whispered, he took the bait. Saturday arrived with beautiful weather, sunny and crisp, a perfect autumn day in Wisconsin. The irony wasn't lost on me. While families across Madison enjoyed the weekend, laughing and creating memories, I was lying in a hospital bed preparing to catch my own son attempting murder. Charlotte arrived at 6 p.m. sharp, right as the previous shift was ending. She'd brought a small bag with her. Jennifer's already in position, she murmured while checking my vitals. Security is stationed at every entrance to this wing, dressed in plain clothes. Dr. Palmer is in his office. Everything's ready. At 7:30 p.m., the door opened. Thomas and Rebecca entered, both dressed casually in jeans and sweaters, clothing that wouldn't draw attention. They'd planned this carefully. "Hello, Mother," Thomas said, his voice loud enough to carry. Then, more quietly, "Is anyone else on this floor?" "The nurse's station is at the other end," Rebecca said, glancing out the door. I checked. There's only one nurse on duty for this entire wing, and she's with another patient. What they didn't know was that Charlotte was in the supply closet adjacent to my room. The door cracked open just enough to see and hear everything. Her phone was recording every word. Finally, Thomas said, his voice dropping to a whisper. I thought this day would never come. We need to be quick, Rebecca urged. What's the plan? Thomas approached my bedside, and I fought every instinct to recoil from him. This was my son, my baby boy. The child I'd rocked to sleep, nursed through illnesses, cheered at Little League games. It's simple, Thomas said, his hand reaching toward the ventilator. We disconnect the oxygen first. Without it, she'll go into distress, but it'll look natural, like her body just gave out. And you're sure the alarm won't bring someone running? Rebecca asked nervously. I disabled the remote alert earlier when I visited. It'll sound here in the room, but it won't alert the nurse's station. By the time anyone checks on her, it'll be too late. My heart was pounding so hard, I was certain they'd hear it. This was it, the moment of truth. My own son, calmly explaining how he planned to murder me for money. Thomas's hand hovered over the ventilator controls, and every second stretched into an eternity. This was the moment where theory became terrible reality, where my son's greed transformed into actual murder. Wait, Rebecca said suddenly, grabbing his wrist. Are you absolutely sure about this? What if something goes wrong? What if someone comes in? Nothing's going to go wrong, Thomas hissed, shaking off her hand. We've been over this 100 times. The nurse is occupied, security is light on weekends, and Mom's never waking up anyway. The doctors said she'd likely be a vegetable even if she did wake up. We're just speeding up the inevitable. The casual cruelty of his words cut deeper than any physical pain I'd endured. A vegetable. That's what he thought of me. That's how he justified this. I know, Rebecca said, wringing her hands. It's just, God, Thomas, this is your mother. Don't you feel anything? Feel anything? Thomas's laugh was cold and hollow. You mean besides the relief? Besides the freedom we'll finally have? Mom has controlled every aspect of my life since Dad died. She used her money to manipulate me into staying close, into accepting her interference in our marriage, into letting her dictate our choices. My mind reeled. Was that truly how he saw my love? My sacrifices? She gave you everything, Rebecca said softly. And for a moment, I thought I heard doubt in her voice. She gave me nothing but obligations, Thomas snapped. Every dollar came with strings. I paid for your college, Thomas. I gave you the down payment, Thomas. I bought you that car, Thomas. Well, guess what? After tonight, all that money is ours. No strings, no guilt, no more listening to her complaints about how we don't visit enough, or call enough, or love her enough. 1.2 million, Rebecca whispered, as if reminding herself of the prize. Plus the insurance policy. That's another $500,000. I had an insurance policy? I'd forgotten about that. A life insurance policy Richard and I had taken out years ago, with Thomas as the sole beneficiary. That brought the total to $1.7 million. My life reduced to a dollar amount. Exactly, Thomas said. Enough to pay off all our debts, buy a bigger house, take that trip around Europe we've always wanted. Enough to finally live our lives instead of being tied to this burden. Burden. The word echoed in my mind like a death knell. Okay, Rebecca said, her voice firmer now. Okay, do it. Just do it quickly. Thomas reached for the ventilator again. His fingers were inches from the controls when Charlotte's voice cut through the room like a whip. I wouldn't do that if I were you. Thomas and Rebecca spun around, their faces draining of color. Charlotte stepped out of the supply closet, her phone held up, the recording light clearly visible. What the... Thomas started, but Charlotte cut him off. Every word you just said has been recorded. Video and audio. You just confessed to planning to murder your mother for her inheritance. You can't... That's not legal, Rebecca shrieked. You can't record us without permission. Actually, I can, Charlotte said calmly. Wisconsin is a one-party consent state. I'm the one party who consented. And even if it wasn't, you just attempted murder in front of a witness. The door burst open. 3 security guards entered, followed by Jennifer Hastings and Dr. Palmer. Thomas Green and Rebecca Green, Jennifer said, her voice ringing with authority. You're both under citizen's arrest for attempted murder. Security, please detain them until the police arrive. This is insane, Thomas shouted as a guard grabbed his arm. She's been in a coma for 2 months. This is entrapment. This is justice, Dr. Palmer said quietly. And your mother isn't in a coma anymore. All eyes turned to me. This was my moment. With every ounce of strength I'd been rebuilding over the past week, I opened my eyes fully and turned my head to look directly at my son. "Hello, Thomas," I said, my voice weak but clear. I heard everything. The look on his face, shock, horror, and then, most chilling of all, anger, will haunt me for the rest of my life. You were awake?" he stammered. "How long? How long have you been awake?" "Long enough," I replied, tears streaming down my face. "Long enough to hear you plan to kill me. Long enough to know that everything I sacrificed for you meant nothing. Long enough to understand that I never really knew you at all." Rebecca had sunk to her knees, sobbing. "We weren't really going to do it. We were just talking. Just talking." "You were seconds away from disconnecting her oxygen," Charlotte said coldly. "That's not just talking. That's attempted murder." Sirens wailed in the distance, growing closer. The Madison Police Department was on its way. Thomas's expression hardened. "You won't get away with this. I'll fight this. I'll hire the best lawyers. That recording won't hold up in court." "Feel free to try," Jennifer said, her smile sharp as a blade. "But you should know. We have multiple witnesses, video evidence, and your own mother's testimony. You planned this for months, disabled hospital alarms, and were caught in the act. Even the best lawyer in the world can't save you from that." As the police arrived and began reading Thomas and Rebecca their rights, I lay there feeling a strange mixture of relief, grief, and exhaustion. I'd survived, but at what cost? My only child was being led away in handcuffs. My family was destroyed. Charlotte squeezed my hand gently. "You did the right thing, Patricia." Had I? I couldn't be sure, but I was alive, and that was something. The hospital room felt different after Thomas and Rebecca were led away in handcuffs. Quieter, yes, but also heavier, as if the very air had absorbed the weight of betrayal and attempted murder. I lay there, still weak but growing stronger by the hour, while Charlotte and Dr. Palmer tended to me with a gentleness that made my heart ache. "How are you feeling?" Dr. Palmer asked, checking my vitals with professional precision. "Physically, I mean. I know emotionally is a different matter entirely." "Tired," I whispered, my voice still raspy from disuse. "And hollow, like someone scooped out everything inside me and left just the shell." Charlotte adjusted my pillows, her movements careful and practiced. "That's completely understandable. You've been through a trauma most people can't even imagine. Give yourself time to process it." But time felt like an enemy now. For 2 months, I'd lost time to unconsciousness. Then I'd spent days watching time tick by while plotting to catch my son in his murderous scheme. Now I had all the time in the world, and I didn't know what to do with it. Detective Sarah Morrison arrived an hour after Thomas and Rebecca were taken into custody. She was a woman in her mid-40s with graying auburn hair and eyes that had seen too much of humanity's darkness. "Mrs. Green," she said, pulling up a chair beside my bed. "I know you're exhausted, but I need to take your statement while everything is still fresh. Are you up for that?" I nodded weakly. "Yes, I want to tell you everything." For the next hour, I recounted the entire ordeal, from the moment I'd regained consciousness and heard Thomas's whispered plan to kill me, to Charlotte's intervention, to the trap we'd set. My voice broke multiple times, especially when describing the moment Thomas had reached for the ventilator controls. "That's your son standing there, planning to suffocate you," Detective Morrison said gently. "I can't imagine how that felt." "It felt like dying anyway," I admitted. "Maybe worse than dying, because I had to keep lying there, pretending to be unconscious while he said those horrible things, that I was a burden, that I'd controlled his life, that my love was manipulation." Detective Morrison made notes on her tablet. "For the record, did you ever use your financial support as a means to control your son's choices?" The question stung, but I understood why she had to ask it. "No, I don't think so. I mean, I wanted what was best for him. I had opinions about his life, like any mother, but I never told him he had to do anything because I'd given him money. The $127,000 for college, the $85,000 for the house down payment, those were gifts. I never asked for anything in return. Did you ever threaten to change your will or withhold money if he didn't comply with your wishes?" "Never," I said firmly. "The thought never even crossed my mind." "Good. That's important. Thomas's attorney will likely try to paint you as a manipulative matriarch who used wealth to dominate her son. We need to establish that your support was genuine and unconditional." Charlotte interjected, "I've been Thomas and Rebecca's nurse during Patricia's hospitalization. I never once saw genuine concern or love from either of them. It was all performance. Especially Rebecca. She complained constantly about having to visit, about the time this was taking, about postponing their vacation plans." "Did you document those complaints?" Detective Morrison asked. "I did. Hospital policy is to keep detailed notes about patient interactions with family members. It's all in Patricia's file." "Excellent. That'll help establish a pattern of behavior." Detective Morrison turned back to me. "Mrs. Green, I need to ask you something difficult. Do you want to press charges against your son and daughter-in-law?" The question hung in the air, like a sword waiting to fall. Did I? Part of me, the mother who'd raised Thomas, who'd loved him unconditionally for 35 years, wanted to find a way out of this nightmare, to wake up and discover it had all been a terrible misunderstanding. But the rational part of me, the part that had heard every cruel word, that had watched my son's hand reach for equipment that would end my life, knew the truth. Thomas and Rebecca had been willing to murder me for money. If I didn't press charges, they might try again. Or worse, they might do this to someone else someday. "Yes," I said finally, my voice steady despite the tears streaming down my face. "I want to press charges. I want them to face the full consequences of what they've done." Detective Morrison nodded approvingly. "That's very brave. I want you to know we have an exceptionally strong case. The recorded confession, the testimony of multiple witnesses, the disabled hospital equipment, all of it points to premeditated attempted murder. The district attorney will likely seek the maximum sentence." "How long?" I asked. "How long could they go to prison?" "In Wisconsin, attempted first-degree intentional homicide carries a maximum sentence of 60 years. Given the premeditation, the financial motive, and the particularly heinous nature of the crime, a son trying to kill his mother, I'd expect they'll both receive significant sentences, probably 15 to 25 years each if they're convicted." 15 to 25 years. Thomas would be 50 to 60 years old when he got out. His life as he knew it was over. "And if they take a plea deal?" I asked. "Depends on what the DA offers, but given the strength of our evidence, I don't think there will be much incentive to offer a favorable deal. We've got them cold." After Detective Morrison left, I lay in the quiet room feeling utterly drained. Charlotte had stepped out to give me privacy, but I could see her through the window, speaking with Dr. Palmer in the hallway. My phone, which Charlotte had retrieved from my personal belongings, sat on the bedside table. I hadn't looked at it yet, hadn't seen what messages or calls I might have missed during my 2-month absence from the world. With trembling hands, I reached for it. The screen lit up with notification after notification. Mostly junk, promotional emails, calendar reminders for appointments I'd obviously missed, but there were personal messages too. 3 voicemails from Thomas, all left during the first week of my hospitalization. I played the first one. "Mom, it's Thomas. I'm at the hospital. The doctors say you had a massive stroke. They don't know if you're going to make it. Please, Mom, please wake up. I need you. I love you." His voice sounded genuinely anguished, terrified, loving. Had he meant those words? Or was it all an act, even then? I played the second message, left 3 days later. "Mom, still no change. The doctors are saying your chances of recovery are very slim. I don't know what I'll do without you. You're my whole world. Please don't leave me." The third message, left a week into my coma, was different, shorter, cooler. "Mom, it's been a week. The doctors think you might be in a persistent vegetative state if you do wake up. Rebecca and I are discussing your care options. We'll make the right decisions. Don't worry. Care options. Decisions." The subtext was clear. They were already planning my death, just waiting for the right moment. I deleted all 3 messages and set the phone aside, unable to look at it anymore. The next morning brought a new visitor, someone I hadn't expected. My brother, Michael, burst into the hospital room like a tornado, his face flushed with anger and concern. "Patricia!" he exclaimed, rushing to my bedside. "Thank God you're awake. I just heard what happened. I was in Seattle on business, completely unreachable for the past 3 days. The police finally tracked me down this morning. I got on the first flight out. Michael was 5 years younger than me, a software engineer who'd moved to Seattle 20 years ago for work. We'd remained close despite the distance, talking every week on the phone. He'd always been protective of me, especially after Richard died. "Michael," I said, my voice breaking. "It's so good to see you." "Jesus, Patty," he said, using the childhood nickname only he was allowed to use. "Thomas tried to kill you, his own mother. I still can't believe it. I mean, I knew he was spoiled, but this is insane." I squeezed his hand, grateful beyond words for his presence. "How did the police reach you?" "They tracked down my work contacts. When Detective Morrison explained what happened, I thought it was some kind of sick joke. Thomas always seemed so devoted to you. A little entitled, maybe, but not a murderer." "I didn't see it either," I admitted. "Not until I heard him that night, whispering with Rebecca about turning off the machines." Michael's jaw clenched. "That woman, I never liked her. From the moment Thomas brought her home 6 years ago, something felt off. She was always calculating, always measuring everything in terms of what she could gain." "Remember their wedding?" I did remember. Rebecca had insisted on an elaborate affair at the Madison Club, $68,000 for a single day. I'd offered to help with costs, and Thomas had immediately accepted without even consulting Rebecca. She'd been furious, cornering me later and saying through gritted teeth, "We don't need your charity, Patricia. We're perfectly capable of paying for our own wedding." But they'd taken the money anyway, just like they'd taken everything else I'd offered. "I remember," I said quietly. "I thought she was just proud, independent." "She was greedy," Michael said bluntly. "And she saw you as a meal ticket. Hell, she saw Thomas as a meal ticket too. I did some digging on the flight over here. Rebecca's been married before. Did you know that?" I shook my head, surprised. "Twice, actually. Both times to older men with money. Both marriages ended in messy divorces where she walked away with substantial settlements. Thomas is husband number 3, and you were supposed to be her biggest payday yet." The revelation hit me like a physical blow. Rebecca was a professional gold digger, and Thomas had been too blind or too willing to see it. "Does Thomas know?" I asked. "I have no idea. Honestly, I don't think he'd care. From what the detective told me, he was the one who initiated the murder plan. Rebecca just went along with it. That somehow made it worse. My son, my flesh and blood, had been the architect of my attempted murder. "I've already contacted my attorney," Michael continued. "He specializes in estate law. We need to make some changes to your will immediately. Obviously, Thomas is no longer your heir." The will. In all the chaos, I hadn't even thought about it. But Michael was right. I couldn't leave my estate to someone who'd tried to kill me for it. "What should I do?" I asked, feeling overwhelmed. "First, we disinherit Thomas completely. Not a penny. Then we set up a trust with me as executor. You can decide how you want your assets distributed, charity, other relatives, whatever you want. Just not to Thomas, and definitely not to Rebecca." "I have a niece," I said, thinking of Michael's daughter, Emily. "She's in grad school, right?" "Yeah, working on her master's in environmental science. She's a good kid, Patty. Smart, hard-working, no sense of entitlement. I'd like to leave something to her, and to you, obviously. And I want to donate a significant portion to elder abuse prevention organizations. If my story can help even one other person avoid what I went through." Michael nodded approvingly. "That's good. That's really good. My attorney can help set that up." Charlotte knocked gently on the door before entering. "Sorry to interrupt, but Patricia needs to rest. Doctor's orders." "Of course," Michael said, standing. "I'll be back this evening, Patty. Try to get some sleep." After he left, Charlotte helped me settle more comfortably in the bed. "Your brother seems like a good man." "He is. He's always looked out for me. That's the thing about family," Charlotte said thoughtfully. "It should be about looking out for each other, protecting each other, not plotting against each other for money." Her words hung in the air as I drifted off to sleep, exhausted from the morning's emotional turmoil. I woke several hours later to find Jennifer Hastings sitting in the chair beside my bed, reviewing documents on her laptop. "Sorry," she said, noticing I was awake. "I didn't want to disturb you, but I wanted to be here when you woke up. We need to discuss the legal proceedings." I pushed myself up slightly, wincing at the stiffness in my muscles. "What's happening?" "Thomas and Rebecca have been officially charged with attempted first-degree intentional homicide. They were arraigned this morning. Both pleaded not guilty." "Not guilty?" I said incredulously. "But we have the recording. They're claiming entrapment and emotional duress. Thomas's attorney is arguing that the hospital set up the entire situation to trap them and that their words were taken out of context." Rebecca's attorney is claiming she was coerced by Thomas and feared for her own safety if she didn't go along with his plan. I felt sick. Will that work? Not a chance, Jennifer said confidently. The recording is clear and unambiguous. Thomas explicitly described how he would disconnect your oxygen and had disabled the alarm system. Rebecca was an enthusiastic participant, not a coerced victim. The jury will see right through their defense. When is the trial? Probably 6 to 8 months from now. These things take time. In the meantime, both have been denied bail. The judge agreed they pose a flight risk and a danger to you. At least that was something. They were behind bars, unable to hurt me. There's something else you need to know, Jennifer said carefully. The media has gotten wind of the story. It's already making headlines. Son attempts to murder mother for inheritance. Madison family torn apart by greed. You're going to be approached by reporters, Patricia. You need to be prepared for that. The thought of my private tragedy becoming public entertainment made me want to crawl into a hole and disappear. What should I do? I asked. Say nothing. Not a word to any reporter. Everything you say could potentially be used in the trial. Let the evidence speak for itself. The days blurred into weeks as I slowly regained my strength. Physical therapy was grueling. Learning to walk again, to dress myself, to perform simple tasks that I'd taken for granted my entire adult life. But I pushed through it, driven by a determination to reclaim my life from the people who'd tried to steal it. Charlotte visited me every day, even on her days off. She'd become more than just my nurse. She was my friend, my confidant, my lifeline during the darkest period of my existence. You're making incredible progress, she said one afternoon, as I successfully walked the length of the hallway without assistance. Dr. Palmer says you'll be ready for discharge in a week. Discharge. The word filled me with both relief and anxiety. Where would I go? My house, the beautiful colonial I'd lived in for 20 years, didn't feel like home anymore. It was filled with memories of Thomas, photographs of a son who'd turned out to be a stranger. I don't know if I can go back there, I admitted to Charlotte. Everything reminds me of him. Then don't, she said simply. Sell it. Start fresh somewhere new. You have the means and the opportunity to reinvent your life completely. She was right. The $650,000 house, plus my investment accounts and savings, gave me options. I could go anywhere, do anything. Maybe I'll travel, I said thoughtfully. Richard and I always talked about seeing Europe. We were going to go for our 30th anniversary, but he got sick before we could make it happen. That sounds perfect, Charlotte said warmly. Life's too short to spend it in places that make you unhappy. But first, I had to testify at the trial. Michael had hired a private investigator named Douglas Chen to dig deeper into Thomas and Rebecca's background. What he uncovered was damning. They've been planning this for at least 8 months, Douglas reported during a meeting at the hospital. He spread photographs and financial documents across the table. Look at this. They opened a joint account last March and deposited $23,000 into it. The memo on the deposit says, Italy Fund. Italy Fund? I asked. Apparently, they'd planned a 3-month trip through Italy, starting in December. They'd booked flights, reserved hotels, even arranged for a private villa in Tuscany for 2 weeks. Total cost? Around $47,000. My stroke had happened in September, 2 months before their trip. 2 months that they'd spent waiting for me to die so they could afford their vacation. There's more, Douglas continued. Rebecca has been corresponding with a divorce attorney since last June. She was planning to leave Thomas after they got your inheritance. That revelation shocked me. She was going to divorce him? Looks that way. The attorney's notes indicate she wanted to secure her share of the inheritance before filing. She even asked about Wisconsin's community property laws and how to hide assets during divorce proceedings. So Rebecca hadn't just been using me, she'd been using Thomas too. They'd both been so consumed with greed that they'd failed to see they were betraying each other. Does Thomas know? I asked. Not yet, but his attorney will find out during discovery. This could actually work in our favor. It establishes that Rebecca was the primary manipulator, and that might make Thomas more willing to testify against her in exchange for a lighter sentence. Would you accept that? Jennifer asked me. If Thomas agrees to testify against Rebecca, the DA might offer him a reduced sentence, 10 to 15 years instead of 25. The question tormented me. Part of me wanted Thomas to spend the rest of his life in prison, but another part, the mother who still loved him despite everything, hoped that maybe somehow there was redemption possible. I don't know, I admitted. I need to think about it. The trial date was set for April, 6 months after my stroke. In the meantime, my recovery continued. I left the hospital in early December, moving temporarily into an extended stay hotel while Michael helped me sort out my housing situation. Selling the house was harder than I'd expected. Every room held memories. Thomas's childhood bedroom, still decorated with his high school trophies and college acceptance letters, the kitchen where I'd taught him to bake chocolate chip cookies, the backyard where Richard had built him a treehouse. But those memories were tainted now, poisoned by betrayal. The house sold in January for $675,000, $25,000 over asking price. With that money and my other assets, I was financially secure for the rest of my life. The irony wasn't lost on me. Thomas had tried to kill me for money I didn't even need him to have. I purchased a modest 2-bedroom condo in a different part of Madison, deliberately choosing a place with no memories, no history. It was my blank slate. In late January, I received a letter from Thomas. It had been forwarded through Jennifer, who'd screened it first to ensure it didn't contain threats. "You should read it," Jennifer said, handing me the envelope. "But you don't have to respond." My hands shook as I opened it. Thomas's handwriting, so familiar, learned during countless homework sessions at the kitchen table, covered 2 pages. "Dear Mom," it began. "I don't know how to start this letter. Sorry doesn't even begin to cover what I've done. I know you probably never want to hear from me again, and I wouldn't blame you. But I need you to know something. I'm sick, not physically, but mentally. Something broke inside me after Dad died. I was so angry at him for leaving us, angry at you for being so sad all the time, angry at the world for being unfair. That anger festered for years, turning into something toxic. When I met Rebecca, she fed that toxicity. She made me feel justified in my resentment. She told me you were controlling, that you used money to manipulate me, that you'd never let me live my own life as long as you were alive. And I believed her. I wanted to believe her, because it was easier than admitting the truth, that I was ungrateful, selfish, and cruel. When you had the stroke, my first thought, God help me, was relief. Relief that I wouldn't have to deal with the guilt anymore. That I could take the inheritance and start fresh, without your disappointed eyes watching my every failure. I don't expect forgiveness. I don't deserve it. But I want you to know that I'm getting help. The prison psychiatrist says I have antisocial personality disorder with narcissistic traits. Apparently, I lack empathy and have an inflated sense of entitlement. Who knew? I'm not making excuses. What I did was unforgivable. I tried to kill my own mother for money. That's not something therapy can fix or that time can heal. But I want you to know that somewhere, buried beneath all the anger and greed and toxicity, there's a small part of me that still loves you. The part that remembers you reading to me at bedtime. The part that remembers you cheering at my soccer games. The part that remembers you holding my hand at Dad's funeral. That part of me is horrified by what I've done. That part of me wishes I could go back and be the son you deserve. I know I can't. So instead, I'm writing this letter to say goodbye. Goodbye to the mother I failed. Goodbye to the family I destroyed. Goodbye to the man I could have been but chose not to be. I hope you live a long, happy life, Mom. You deserve that. You deserve everything I tried to take from you with what's left of my love, Thomas. I read the letter 3 times, tears streaming down my face. Was it genuine? Was Thomas truly remorseful? Or was this another manipulation, an attempt to reduce his sentence by playing the reformed sinner? I honestly didn't know, and perhaps I never would. April arrived with spring flowers and the promise of renewal. But for me, it brought the trial. The moment where I'd have to face Thomas and Rebecca in court and recount the nightmare they'd put me through. The Madison County Courthouse was an imposing building, all stone and glass, designed to invoke the weight of justice. As Michael and I climbed the steps on that first day of testimony, I felt the eyes of the gathered media on me. Despite Jennifer's advice to stay silent, my story had leaked, probably through court documents, and it had become a national sensation. The Mercy Kill Mother, one tabloid had dubbed me. From coma to courtroom, proclaimed another headline. I hated it. Hated the attention, the speculation, the armchair psychologists dissecting my relationship with Thomas on social media. But Jennifer had been right. The public attention actually helped our case. The prosecution had access to a larger jury pool now, and public opinion was firmly on my side. The courtroom was packed. I spotted Charlotte in the gallery, along with Michael, my niece Emily, and several nurses from the hospital who'd cared for me. Their presence gave me strength. Thomas and Rebecca sat at separate defense tables, their attorneys flanking them like guards. Thomas wore a suit I'd bought him 2 Christmases ago, a dark navy that had cost me $800. The irony was painful. Rebecca was dressed in a conservative dress, her hair pulled back, makeup minimal. She looked like a wholesome kindergarten teacher, not someone who'd planned murder for money. They wouldn't look at me. Both kept their eyes down or focused on their attorneys, as if I didn't exist. Judge Helen Crawford presided, a no-nonsense woman in her 60s with a reputation for running a tight courtroom. She called the proceedings to order, and the prosecution began its case. Assistant District Attorney Marcus Webb was a formidable presence, tall, commanding, with a voice that filled the courtroom. His opening statement was devastating. "Ladies and gentlemen of the jury," he began, "this is a case about greed. Greed so overwhelming, so consuming, that it drove a son and his wife to plot the murder of the woman who'd given that son everything. Patricia Green loved her son unconditionally. She paid $127,000 for his college education. She gave him $85,000 for a house. She supported him emotionally and financially throughout his entire adult life. And how did Thomas Green repay that love? By standing over her hospital bed, planning to disconnect her oxygen and suffocate her while she was helpless. By disabling hospital alarms so no one would come to save her. By viewing his mother not as a human being, but as an obstacle standing between him and $1.7 million. The jury's faces reflected horror and disgust. Good. Over the next 3 days, the prosecution methodically built its case. Charlotte testified first, describing in heartbreaking detail the moment she'd heard Thomas's whispered words. "Tonight, we'll turn off the machines. No one will suspect." "And what was your reaction?" Marcus Webb asked. "I was horrified," Charlotte said, her voice steady but emotional. "I've been a nurse for 17 years. I've seen family members make difficult end-of-life decisions. But this wasn't that. This was murder. Plain and simple. Mrs. Green wasn't brain dead. She wasn't on life support with no hope of recovery. She was improving, and her son wanted to kill her anyway." Thomas's attorney, Daniel Reeves, tried to shake her testimony during cross-examination. "Isn't it true, Nurse Martinez, that you'd been advocating for Mrs. Green's continued aggressive treatment against the recommendations of the medical team?" "That's not true," Charlotte replied firmly. "Dr. Palmer and the entire medical team were optimistic about Mrs. Green's recovery. There was never any discussion of withdrawing care. But you admit you had a personal investment in Mrs. Green's recovery? You saw her as more than just a patient?" "I saw her as a human being whose life was in danger. If that's a personal investment, then yes, I was invested." The jury seemed to appreciate Charlotte's honesty and compassion. Dr. Palmer testified next, confirming that I'd been showing signs of improvement before Thomas's planned intervention. "In your medical opinion," Marcus Webb asked, "would Patricia Green have survived if her oxygen had been disconnected?" "Absolutely not," Dr. Palmer said without hesitation. "She was dependent on ventilation support. Disconnecting it would have resulted in her death within minutes." The defense attorneys tried various strategies. Thomas's lawyer, Daniel Reeves, argued entrapment, that the hospital had created an artificial situation to trap his client. Rebecca's attorney, Linda Marsh, painted her client as a victim of Thomas's manipulation, forced to go along with his plan out of fear. But the recording demolished both defenses. When Marcus Webb played it for the jury, you could have heard a pin drop in that courtroom. Thomas's voice, cold and calculating. "We disconnect the oxygen first. Without it, she'll go into distress, but it'll look natural." Rebecca's voice eager and impatient. $1.2 million plus the insurance policy. That's another $500,000. Thomas again. "Enough to pay off all our debts. Buy a bigger house. Take that trip around Europe we've always wanted." Several jurors visibly flinched. One woman in the back row wiped tears from her eyes. Then it was my turn to testify. Walking to the witness stand felt like walking through water. Every step heavy, deliberate, surreal. I placed my hand on the Bible and swore to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, as if I could do anything else. The truth was all I had left. Marcus Webb approached me with gentle respect. Mrs. Green, I know this is difficult, but I need you to tell the jury, in your own words, what happened the night you heard your son planning to kill you. I took a deep breath and began. I'd been in a coma for almost 2 months. Or at least, everyone thought I was. But that night, I woke up. I couldn't move, couldn't speak, could barely open my eyes, but I could hear, and what I heard destroyed me. I described every detail: Thomas's whispered words, Rebecca's eager agreement, the cold calculation in their voices as they reduced my life to a dollar amount. What went through your mind in that moment? Marcus asked. I thought I must be hallucinating, that the stroke had damaged my brain and I was imagining it. Because surely my son, the boy I'd raised, loved, sacrificed everything for, couldn't possibly be standing over my bed planning to murder me for money. But it was real. All of it was real. My voice broke, and Judge Crawford called a brief recess. Charlotte appeared at my side with water and tissues. You're doing great, she whispered. Almost done. When we reconvened, Daniel Reeves began his cross-examination. He was aggressive, trying to paint me as a controlling, manipulative mother who'd driven her son to desperation. Isn't it true, Mrs. Green, that you frequently used your financial support to influence your son's decisions? No, I said firmly. I gave my son money because I loved him and wanted to help him. I never demanded anything in return. But you had opinions about his life choices, didn't you? About his wife, his career, where he lived? Of course I had opinions. I'm his mother, but I never tried to control him. Isn't it true that you disapproved of his marriage to Rebecca? I hesitated. I had concerns, but I supported their marriage. I gave them $85,000 for their house. Ah, yes, the house. And didn't you frequently remind your son of that gift? No, I never. Mrs. Green, isn't it true that you told your son, and I quote, "After everything I've given you, this is how you treat me"? The quote sounded damning out of context, but I remembered the conversation. It had been 2 years ago, after Thomas forgot my birthday for the 3rd year in a row. That was one comment made in hurt and frustration when my son forgot my birthday. It wasn't about money. It was about feeling forgotten and unappreciated. Reeves pressed on for another hour, but I held firm. Every attack he made just reinforced how desperate Thomas's defense had become. When the prosecution rested its case, the defense put on their own witnesses. Thomas's college roommate testified that I'd been overbearing and intrusive during Thomas's college years. Rebecca's sister claimed Thomas had been psychologically abusive toward Rebecca, forcing her to participate in the murder plot, but none of it mattered. The recording, the testimony, the disabled hospital alarms, the evidence was overwhelming. Closing arguments took place on a Friday in late April. Marcus Webb's summation was powerful. Patricia Green is alive today because of luck and the courage of nurse Charlotte Martinez. But make no mistake, Thomas Green and Rebecca Green tried to kill her. They planned it, they prepared for it, and they were seconds away from executing it when they were stopped. They don't get credit for failing to complete their murder. They deserve to be held accountable for attempting it. The jury deliberated for less than 4 hours. When they returned, their faces were grim. In the matter of the state of Wisconsin versus Thomas Green, the 4-person read, we find the defendant guilty of attempted first-degree intentional homicide. I felt Michael's hand squeeze mine. In the matter of the state of Wisconsin versus Rebecca Green, we find the defendant guilty of attempted first-degree intentional homicide and conspiracy to commit murder. It was over. They'd been convicted. Sentencing came 2 weeks later. Judge Crawford showed no mercy. Thomas Green, she said, her voice ringing with authority, you have been convicted of trying to murder your own mother for financial gain. This court has heard testimony about the love, support, and sacrifice Patricia Green provided throughout your life. You repaid that devotion with betrayal and attempted murder. I hereby sentence you to 23 years in state prison. Thomas's face remained blank, but I saw his hands trembling. Rebecca Green, Judge Crawford continued, you actively participated in planning and attempting to execute this murder. You saw Patricia Green not as a human being, but as a source of money. I hereby sentence you to 18 years in state prison. Rebecca broke down sobbing. Her attorney immediately filed notice of appeal, but Jennifer assured me it would fail. The conviction was rock solid. As they were led away, Thomas finally looked at me. Our eyes met across the courtroom. I tried to read his expression, remorse, anger, resignation, but I saw nothing, just emptiness. And I realized I didn't know my son at all. Perhaps I never had. That was 3 months ago. Today I'm sitting in a cafe in Florence, Italy, watching the sunset paint the Duomo in shades of gold and rose. The cappuccino in front of me is perfect, the air is warm, and for the first time in a year, I feel at peace. I used part of my inheritance to establish the Patricia Green Foundation for Elder Abuse Prevention. We provide resources, legal support, and education to help other families avoid what I experienced. Charlotte serves on the board, as does Jennifer. Together, we've already helped 12 families navigate similar situations. Michael and Emily visit often. Emily finished her master's degree, and I was proud to help pay off her student loans, a gift with no strings attached, just love. I've traveled to Spain, France, and Greece. I'm learning Italian and taking painting classes. I'm 62 years old, and I'm finally living the life I'd put on hold to raise Thomas. Sometimes I wonder if I failed as a mother. If I'd done something differently, could I have raised a son who valued love over money? But my therapist, yes, I'm in therapy, and it helps, reminds me that I did my best with the information and resources I had. Thomas's choices were his own. The trial is behind me. Thomas and Rebecca are in prison, and I'm here, alive and free, with years ahead of me to create new memories, new meaning, new purpose. I survived a massive stroke. I survived a murder plot. And now, I'm not just surviving, I'm thriving. To anyone watching this video who's experienced family betrayal or elder abuse, you're not alone. There are people who will fight for you, support you, and help you reclaim your life. Don't give up. You're stronger than you know. And to all of you who followed my story, thank you. Thank you for your support, your kind comments, your belief that justice matters. Please subscribe to this channel if you haven't already, and hit that like button if my story resonated with you. Leave a comment telling me where you're watching from and what time it is there. I love hearing from you all around the world. From Florence, Italy, where it's 6 p.m. and the light is absolutely magical, this is Patricia Green, reminding you that it's never too late to start over. It's never too late to choose yourself. It's never too late to live. Ciao, my friends. Until next time.